This is the birth of a new generation.
What's your name?
Elisa.
What is that?
We're going to study as if our lives are just children. We'll learn, fight, and live another night.
A bat-like creature grasped a pink gemstone and flew into a cave. Suddenly, its body enlarged. The grotesque creature transformed into a naked woman, tightly biting into the pink gemstone. In the world of vampires, there are 13 such gemstones, each bestowing a unique supernatural ability. During a war among vampire clans, many of these gemstones were lost, and only a few remained, held by certain families, including Alisa's. Her family, the Heirs from Germany, concealed their identities and lived in a small town, sustaining themselves on fresh blood. They spent their days indoors, forbidden from going outside, occasionally entertained by a visiting bird. Alisa, unable to endure her confined life any longer, seized a moment when her father was absent to open a window. Despite her brother's protests, she climbed onto the roof, happily waved to a boy passing by, and roamed the night streets. There, she met a human boy holding a book by an author she admired. They joyfully conversed until Alisa, unable to control herself, revealed her fangs. She quickly turned away, claiming a toothache. The boy rushed into the house to fetch medicine for her. Using this opportunity, Alisa fled into a dense, foggy street where she mistakenly handled an orange at a stall, not realizing that items had to be paid for. The stall owner grabbed her hand, and reflexively, she bared her fangs in defense. Recognized as a Makaran, he loudly called for help, and Alisa had to escape, pursued by a man wielding a cross. She managed to climb over a wall and through a window back to her house, but this exposed her family's location. Alisa apologized profusely to her father, who quickly woke her mother from her coffin as they sensed familiar scents of garlic and silver. The Rasmus group, specialized in hunting Makarans, had arrived. In the chaos, Alice's brother questioned her interest in the outside world. Reluctantly, she placed his hand over her chest, revealing her human-like heartbeat. At that moment, her father spotted Kavina, a notorious Makaran hunter. Alice's mother activated the pink gemstone to signal for help from Magnus. After lighting a candle, they hurriedly left the house. While fleeing, Alisa suddenly felt a searing pain. Images flashed into her mind as she touched a glowing ring on her left hand. Deep in the woods, an old man awoke from his coffin. The flames within him rekindled. Surrounded by the red-masked group, Alisa took refuge in an attic. When confronted, she claimed to be a curious human, but her lack of reflection in a mirror revealed her true nature. She managed to escape through an attic window, running into the streets. Unexpectedly, she was caught by a member of the Red Mask, who turned out to be her foster father. As familiar images flashed in her hand, Alisa realized she had awakened the old man, who wore a ring with a pink gemstone. Her foster father recognized the signal but kept its meaning from her, promising to reveal the truth when the time was right. They quickly rejoined her grandmother and brother. Magnus, having received the distress signal, arrived to rescue them. As Kavina caught up, Alice's family safely boarded a boat. Unforgiving, Kavina returned home to prepare her son, Niku, the boy Alisa had previously met, to leave. It seems like Niku was not very supportive of his mother's cause, as he reluctantly packed up to leave with her. Meanwhile, Alisa was curiously observing everything around her, receiving cold stares from others on the boat. Her grandmother warned her to be cautious while on the boat. Yet, during the night, Alisa's palm lit up again, and she stealthily watched the old man. He took a creature from a cage and made it kiss the ring on his hand, transforming the creature into a human. He then threw a curtain over the woman, and from their conversation, it was revealed that the old man was Dracula, who had been asleep for over 300 years. The gemstones of the clans were made from Dracula's tears and Elizabeth's blood. Suddenly, the light vanished. Alisa wrapped her glowing hand with cloth and sneaked up to the ship's deck, exhilarated by her newfound freedom. Suddenly, a young man pulled her aside, speaking telepathically to warn her that they shouldn't let Magnus see them wandering. Only the Drakkar clan knew how to read minds. This clan was known for its cold and brutal nature, and suddenly Alisa felt no affection for the man before her, especially the leader, Magnus, who had stolen many pink gemstones during the war. Hearing Alice's inner thoughts, the boy angrily revealed he was Magnus's son. Alisa apologized, but he was still furious and stormed down to the ship's hold. Her foster father also pulled Alisa back to their room. Just as she was about to sleep, the strange light reappeared. Dracula was seen crawling on a statue of Elizabeth, seeking to recover all the gemstones to revive his beloved. He entrusted a peasant girl with his ring, sending her aboard the ship to collect the gemstones. If successful, Dracula promised to release all the creatures. Tonka, after swallowing the ring, revealed her true form and soared into the sky. Elisa, witnessing this, knew the ship was heading into danger. Suddenly, a blue-eyed young man approached, stating the ship had stopped on his clan's coast, inviting Elisa to have dinner. Alice's brother was petting a mouse, and the children from other clans looked down on Elisa with disdain. Magnus's son, Lars, asked her to introduce herself. When she revealed her surname, she was mocked even more, as they looked down on her clan. The blue-eyed boy, who was Luciano, heir to the Nufris clan, defended Elisa and threw a Bible at Lars, which burned his hand. Luciano picked up the Bible calmly, unaffected by its power. Enraged, Lars used magic to lift Luciano into the air, causing his sisters to laugh. Another boy from the Macron clan joined in the fun, using lightning from his palm to singe the girl's hair. The discord escalated into a fight. Elisa, determined to protect Luciano, bravely jumped at Lars. The dining hall turned chaotic until Manor, furious, commanded everyone to stop. The well-behaved children returned to their seats, and the clan leader spoke. Originally, there were 13 clans, but only 5 remained after the war. Nofris from Italy, Drakas from Norway, Virat from England, Piras from France, and Elisa's clan, Varmelia from Germany, to fight against the Red Mask group and strive for peaceful, prosperous days ahead. They decided to establish a school where all heirs could learn and share the abilities of the 5 clans. At the same time, Tonka arrived beside the ship. The children, saying their goodbyes, noticed her observing the gemstones. Reporting back to Dracula, his shadow suddenly appeared, revealing he held Tonka's clan's gemstone, allowing his shadow to move freely and monitor Tonka constantly. Tonka, revealing her true form, escaped in Magnus's car. Following the convoy, the heirs on the ship began their studies. Elisa was eagerly awaiting her next lesson. The first skill to learn was how to counteract sacred objects. This skill belonged to the Nufris clan, and today's teaching assistant was Umberto. He opened a book and began murmuring a spell. Then, he boldly grabbed a crucifix with his bare hands, causing the children to listen fearfully, their fangs bared. However, after Luciano finished reciting the spell, he too could handle the crucifix. Macon, feeling bored, did not want to stay in class. He asked Lars to use his powers to knock over a bed. The two took advantage of the ensuing chaos to leave, but Elisa saw everything. Before leaving, Lars warned Elisa not to reveal the secret to anyone. Soon, the classroom was restored to order, and the principal nearby suddenly received news from Magnus about a stolen ruby. The children, unaware of the looming danger, obediently listened to the teacher. Meanwhile, Umedo noticed that 2 students, Lars and Macon, were missing. He turned and asked Elisa, who refused to speak. The teacher had no choice but to take her to the principal, where she finally revealed the truth. Elsewhere, the mischievous students were using Lars's powers to summon a storm over a group of girls, who ran for cover into a nearby building. The boys followed, amused, but unexpectedly found themselves in a church. Dizzy and exhausted, they collapsed. A nun thought they were possessed and sprinkled holy water on Macon. At a crucial moment, the Countess intervened, hypnotizing the nun and taking the troublesome duo away. The principal assigned them to detention for a week. Lars resentfully looked at Elisa, who later apologized and even offered to help them clean. Lars, confused by Alice's intentions, tried to read her mind, only to see an image of Dracula. Before he could question her, Elisa was taken away by her foster father, who stayed behind to look after her. After returning to their ship quarters, the Countess questioned Elisa, revealing she knew her mother and even her heartbeat. Heartbroken, Elisa returned to her coffin and suddenly found herself at Dracula's location, a bar. Dracula realized Elisa was always secretly watching him. He used his power to send her back. As Elisa woke up in her coffin, Dracula drained the bar patrons, restoring his youthful appearance. He approached the receptionist to help him find the ruby. Just as he was about to disclose the location, he sensed Elisa's surveillance and abruptly severed the connection, leaving her without crucial information. Suddenly, someone knocked on her coffin, and as Elisa opened it, Lars's sister dumped a bucket of water on her. Elisa bared her fangs and attacked, but she was no match for the siblings and took a beating. Later in class, Elisa, distracted by memories of her mother, was asked by the principal to stand and explain her family's power. Reluctantly, she revealed that her clan's ability was love. which elicited mockery from her classmates. The principal then detailed the abilities of 13 clans, including the Tova clan from the Netherlands, known for their swimming skills, useful for the Macarons who couldn't swim. Meanwhile, Dracula, with a slave in tow, sensed the ruby from the Tova clan. He threw the slave into the water to retrieve the ruby for him. Elisa secretly witnessed this. Lars, sensing her distress, read her thoughts and saw her mother in her memories. Elisa realized Lars was invading her privacy and confronted him. She then left the dining hall to find her foster father in the servants' quarters, pressing him for details about her mother's life and tragic end. Unable to comprehend that love was indeed the cause, Elisa remained perplexed. Elisa asked her foster father what the light on her hand was, but he refused to tell her, only instructing her to keep it secret. This light would find its next owner. Elisa was frustrated by her foster father's reticence. They argued heatedly before parting ways. Returning to her classroom, Elisa retrieved a bottle of holy water from a cupboard. Determined to teach the Scandi siblings a lesson, she replaced their perfume with the holy water. The next morning, when they used the perfume, the holy water injured them. Lars knew Elisa was responsible, but chose not to expose her. Meanwhile, the principal handed a ruby over to the Countess for safekeeping, which Roy secretly observed and reported back to Dracula. However, Dracula ordered Roy to temporarily set aside the ruby issue and keep a close watch on Elisa to discover her true identity. At that moment, a girl eating a wolf boarded the ship, causing tension and revealing fangs among the others because wolves were thought to be extinct and they suspected she was a shapeshifter. She introduced herself as Ivy from the Lycana lineage. The principal was skeptical and detained her, but Lars, using his ability to read minds, confirmed her truthfulness. Ivy explained that the wolf was not her pet but her brother. Tamer, the principal allowed her to stay, and while others disliked the wolves, Elisa reached out and quickly became friends with Ivy, even sharing a desk with her. Ivy asked to borrow Alice's notebook to copy notes, not realizing that it contained drawings and hallucinations Elisa had seen. Roy, nearby, saw the notebook, which was part of today's lesson on distinguishing Macaron types. Bloodline, Macarons, born of Dracula's lineage, and Shadow, Macarons, humans turned into Macarons with no powers and subservient to the bloodlines, whom Lars derogatorily called slaves. Elisa disliked this terminology, leading to a heated exchange of thoughts between them. Ivy, witnessing this, asked if Elisa and Lars were a couple, causing Lars to blush and Elisa to promptly deny it. As a regular day drew to a close, Elisa, having finally made a new friend, found herself comfortably chatting with Ivy. That night, lying in her coffin, Elisa couldn't sleep and the mysterious light on her hand failed to appear. She was clueless about its rules. Deciding to visit the library, she woke Luciano to ask for directions, and he agreed to draw her a map. Lars, overhearing their whisper, secretly followed them, and Tonka also flew after them. However, Elisa was unaware that the greatest danger wasn't from these two, but from Calvin's group, who had also arrived. Following the map, Elisa reached the library, while Tonka, transformed into human form, observed her from a nearby building. Elisa was searching for books about Dracula and surprisingly found one. At the same time, Calvin and Niku also entered the library to buy books. The two, delighted at the encounter, chatted and laughed as they left the library together. Tonka reported the book's significance to Dracula, who ordered its immediate destruction. The scene shifted to a restaurant chosen by Niku. Bathed in sunlight, unwilling to decline Nika's invitation, Elisa used an umbrella for cover. They sat down to eat, and while ordering, Elisa conversed fluently in Italian, impressing Niku, who excitedly took her hand. Lars, unable to contain his jealousy, stormed off, passing Tonka in disguise as a waitress. But when a chef discovered a body in the floor, Tonka, realizing the situation was dire, stole the book and fled. Elisa and Niku chased after her, their pursuit so rapid that they were eventually stopped by the police. Elisa and Niku were taken into temporary custody. As the police officer entered, he mentioned that the restaurant's waitress had been bitten to death and stripped of her clothes. Elisa suspected the thief who stole her book was responsible and likely not human. She realized she needed to escape quickly. Niku attempted to pick the lock with a paperclip, while Elisa used her strength to bend the iron bars. Aware that her strength was unusually high, she pretended the bars were already loose and asked Niku for help. Though hesitant, Niku managed to push the door open with little effort. Seizing the moment, Elisa complimented his strength, and they successfully escaped through the window. They ran through alleys but didn't get far before Elisa spotted police clashing with the red-masked group. which included Kavina. Realizing she needed to return to the ship quickly, Elisa was about to leave when Niku, unwilling to part with her, embraced her and promised to meet again the next day. For the first time, Elisa felt a warmth. The light in her hand reappeared, and she envisioned herself opening a rock cave and reaching for a rope, which immediately transported her to a beach surrounded by loved ones, including her parents. A tear fell from Alice's eye, a surprising occurrence since McCarran supposedly cannot cry. When Elisa neared the ship, she found the principal taking attendance. Earlier, the police chief had made a gentleman's agreement with the principal. As long as McCarrans didn't attack humans, the police would not interfere. However, the waitress's death had disrupted this balance, and the principal was now checking everyone to find the culprit. Meanwhile, Ivy approached Lars, asking him to help conceal Alice's unauthorized departure. Knowing his affection for Elisa, Lars, typically harsh but soft-hearted, quickly positioned himself behind Elisa and instructed her to board the ship from the side. As Elisa blended into the crowd, her father, not finding her, grew anxious. Lars then boldly boarded the ship, drawing everyone's attention, which allowed Elisa to mingle unnoticed. When Lars was confined, Alberto entered the detention room with a crucifix, intending to confront Lars. Lars managed to chant a spell against the holy relic, mastering the resistance to sacred objects. However, Alberto then produced a silver cross, which Lars could not withstand and appeared panicked. Fortunately, the Countess arrived just in time, taking Lars to the office. The principal measured the distance between Lars's fangs and concluded it didn't match the victim's wounds, eliminating him as a suspect. At the same time, Ivy urged Elisa to honestly admit her activities outside the ship. Elisa confessed to encountering human-biting McCarrans, but withheld further details. Her foster father angrily pulled her aside. Ivy sighed deeply, suggesting she too held secret. Alice's foster father demanded to know why she left the ship and if she had consumed human blood, reminding her that McCarrans under 18 must not drink blood. Elisa, flustered, inadvertently revealed her affection for a human boy. Her foster father, distressed, blamed himself, admitting his recent distractions had kept him from caring for her properly. Elisa, probing further, discovered her foster father was in love with Raphaelia, a shadow McCarran on the ship. They had promised to keep their relationship secret. Meanwhile, Ivy informed Lars that Elisa had encountered a McCarran from the Upiri lineage in town and that the perpetrator, Tonka of the Upiri, was entrusted by Dracula with the pink ruby from Ivy's family. As Elisa joined others on the deck, Ivy approached her, but suddenly Alice's hand glowed brightly. She envisioned Dracula grabbing the rope and entering a vivid beach illusion. Together with Dracula, a stormy sky appeared, and her parents vanished. Elisa awoke from the vision, tears streaming down her face. Even more bizarrely, Dracula's eyes were also moist, suggesting an unknown connection or power in Elisa. At this moment, Elisa didn't know how to explain herself and hurried down to the ship's hold. Just then, she was caught by the Countess, who took her to her office to measure her teeth. Alice's teeth were completely different from the criminals. Elisa returned to her classroom, where Ivy and Lars told her they would keep the secret of her tears, and Lars revealed that the light he saw was actually a missile. Lars' father had told her about the power of a missile that could destroy the entire species of McCarrans. The Countess then entered the classroom to announce that everyone had been checked, and the murderer was not present. However, she was unaware that Tonka was on the boat, having transformed into a mouse and hidden in this classroom. Today, the class would learn about the virus family's ability in France to communicate with animals. The lesson would be taught by Joanna, the virus family heir. Macam was dismissive of this ability. The Countess immediately pulled him to a window and drew the curtains. The sunlight caused Macam to burn painfully and scream. Joanna then released a swarm of moths and slowly recited a spell. The moths quickly covered the window, saving Macam. The Countess reminded him to remember today's lesson well. After school, Elisa's group went down to the ship's bomb bay. Ivy told Elisa that she saw Dracula transform Tonka back into a human and force her to swallow a ring. That's why she had chased Tonka onto the ship. Initially, she planned to find the ruby and leave, ignoring everyone on board. However, Alice's attitude had changed her mind. Ivy agreed to stay and help Elisa uncover the secret. Elisa mentioned someone wanted to steal the ruby for her foster father to gain his attention. At this time, he was deeply involved with Rafaela. Elisa reminded them to be more humble. Unexpectedly, her foster father planned to ask for permission at a clan conference to allow McCarrans to date openly. This might cause her foster father and Rafaela to be accused. But her foster father had fallen in love and couldn't escape. Enraged, Elisa ran outside. Her foster father followed, hoping she would understand his feelings. Elisa was affected by her foster father's words. At that moment, a scream from Rafaela, who had come to confirm whether the ruby was still there, filled the room. She had been attacked by Tonka. When they arrived, Rafaela was already dead. Elisa chased Tonka out onto the ship's deck. The Countess and her husband woke up late and believed Elisa's foster father had killed Rafaela, so they ordered their servant to imprison him. Seeing the love of his life dead, her foster father's heart turned cold, and he voluntarily accepted his punishment, exposing himself to the sunlight. The execution would be carried out the following morning. Meanwhile, Elisa went to the town, lost Tonka's trail, but unexpectedly ran into Niku and Kavina, who dragged her home for dinner. Elisa was extremely tense, fearing her Makaran identity would be exposed, but she accidentally discovered the same book at Nika's house. Kavina, suspicious, pulled out a necklace with a cross and handed it to her. Niku saw this, pulled his mother aside, and scolded her. The cross burned Alice's hand, and she quickly recited a protective spell she had learned in class, which surprisingly worked. Elisa put the necklace on, and only then did Kavina feel safe enough for the two to date. Elisa immediately returned the necklace to Niku, and just as they were happily chatting, Ivy rushed over. Elisa asked her to wait a moment, then kissed Niku before agreeing to leave with Ivy. Learning that the Countess was preparing to execute her foster father, Elisa went to the principal to argue his case, but he demanded evidence proving her foster father's innocence. Lars took this opportunity to use his ability to read minds, probing those present. He learned that the principal had long known someone intended to steal the ruby, and punishing her father served a dual purpose. It avoided panic over the theft and punished someone for recklessly dating a Makaran. The three planned to prove the connection between Dracula and Tonka, the main clue being the book at Nika's house. Elisa intentionally lured Niku away, giving Lars and Ivy the chance to steal the book, which contained records of Dracula's deeds. At the time when he was fighting on the battlefield, someone deceived Elizabeth by saying her husband had died in battle, causing her immense pain and leading her to decide to end her own life. When Dracula returned victorious and found his beloved dead, he held her and cried, and at that moment, demons appeared. Dracula traded his soul for immortality. Unexpectedly, Elizabeth couldn't bear the thought of becoming a monster and refused to continue living. As Dracula wept holding his wife, his tears mixed with Elizabeth's blood, creating 13 ruby stones. The knot in Alice's hallucination was not ordinary either. If it was untied by Dracula, the gates of hell would open, allowing Elizabeth to be resurrected. However, if it was untied by a Makaran with a human soul, it would end the lives of all other Makarans. Meanwhile, the spark in Alice's hand was the humanity that had escaped from Dracula, allowing her to sense him. Elsewhere, to obtain the ruby, Tonka targeted Makaran, who was frustrated. She easily seduced the indecisive young man. With the help of Mankum, Tonka hid in the coat of Alice's younger brother. At the same time, Dracula went to a tomb, the resting place of the beloved family's ruby, which would allow him not to fear the sun. This family had used a beam of light to protect the stone. Dracula simply had to wait for the right moment. As soon as the light completely went out, he quickly jumped down to retrieve the ruby, enabling the Shadow Makaran to block the light outside. Dracula successfully obtained the ruby, and Elisa secretly witnessed everything. Lars, interrupting her thoughts, warned that someone was approaching. And sure enough, the principal soon appeared to escort her foster father to his final journey. Her foster father was escorted onto the ship's bomb deck under everyone's watchful eyes. Unexpectedly, Alice's brother Tomo suddenly hugged the Countess. It was actually the critter in his sleeve causing trouble. As he snatched the ruby stone, the Countess quickly realized what was happening and awakened Tomo. As the two struggled, the ruby fell to the ground, and Tonka seized the opportunity to fly out of the sleeve, transform into human form, and grab the ruby. The Countess was about to retrieve it, but no one paid attention to Alice's foster father on the bomb deck. Seeing the sun about to rise, Lars thought of something. He used his ability to read thoughts to tell Elisa that she and Dracula were one now. Whatever abilities he had, she possessed too. For instance, he had just gained the ability to resist sunlight. Hearing this, Elisa quickly ran up to the bomb deck and pushed her foster father into the hole. She was exposed to the sunlight, but was unharmed, feeling the warmth for the first time. Meanwhile, below on the bomb deck, Tonka bit the Countess, wounded her, and stole the ruby. The wound on the Countess's hand matched the evidence left behind, clearing her father of the charges as everyone bid farewell to the tragic Rafaela. Alice's father cremated his beloved daughter, while Tonka, with the ruby in tow, flew to a cave and transformed back into human form to report to his master about the events. Surprised that Elisa could appear in sunlight, Dracula was astounded and ordered her to continue stealing rubies while also keeping an eye on Elisa. Soon after, Elisa was back in a vision, seeing Dracula with the ruby, using it to speak with Elizabeth's soul. When Elisa returned to reality, she immediately woke Luciano to ask what powers the Countess's ruby held. His parents owned 2 rubies. The one stolen yesterday was Arafath's ruby, which could speak to the dead. Realizing she might also be able to speak with her mother, Elisa asked Luciano how to use the ruby. But her first attempt was ineffective, and just as she was disappointed and heading down to the ship's hold, the spirit of her father appeared. Through this conversation, Elisa learned her biological father was human, which explained her heart, but their conversation couldn't last long due to the ruby's limited power. But Elisa was still very happy, and she hurried to share the news with Ivy. Soon after, Lars entered the dining hall, pretending not to see Macam, and enthusiastically greeted everyone as he went straight to Elisa. Ignoring his disappointed friend, the 3 went down to the basement to confirm Elisa's existing powers: impervious to light, able to swim, talk to the dead, control shadows, and manipulate objects. At that moment, her foster father came to ask Elisa why she wasn't afraid of sunlight, cautioning her not to let her powers cloud her judgment. Meanwhile, Tonka had completely taken control of Mankin, not wanting to lure Macam into drinking human blood. Shortly thereafter, a new class started, this one on how to read other people's thoughts. Taught by Lars' 2 sisters, the Countess wanted to probe Alice's secrets, so she had Elisa agree to have her thoughts read, exposing all of Alice's thoughts to the class. The sympathy felt for Ivy and the impression made on Lars, along with the stubborn young human, were all mocked. Elisa was talked about to the point of tears, surprising everyone. Unable to hold back any longer, Elisa pushed the other girl down and even choked the Countess from a distance, seemingly overwhelmed by the Dracula energy within her. Fortunately, her brother woke her in time, and a heartbroken Elisa ran out of the classroom. She ran to a deserted place in town wanting to call her mother to talk, but her mother refused to appear. Elisa jumped into the water, but that did not calm her heart. She locked herself in a cell. At the same time, Ivy looked extremely tense, holding a pair of scissors as she went to meet Samer. She was about to discuss something very important but stopped upon seeing Elisa, finally revealing Ivy was hiding a secret. Elsewhere, Dracula was in trouble. A one-eyed man named Abraham, armed with a silver bullet, was looking for him. Abraham was also wearing a ruby ring and had invisibility stones from the Caminata family in Switzerland. He had always been secretly searching for Dracula, hoping to use his powers to find more ruby stones. Elisa was also forced to reveal the truth, but when her foster father discreetly reminded her, she still kept the rocket matter secret. Elisa said she could no longer feel her superpowers, certain something had happened to Dracula. As soon as she spoke, she began to experience extreme pain because Abraham was torturing Dracula to force him into a room full of crosses. Elisa couldn't stand it and immediately fainted. Even Lars could no longer read her thoughts. Now there was only one very dangerous way left, and that was for Lars and his 3 sisters to read Alice's thoughts together. Although this method was forbidden, Lars could only try to use this method once. If they failed, they would get lost in Alice's thoughts. The principal cleared the room of unrelated people, and Lars did not hesitate to enter Alice's mind. Inside, it was like a huge maze, and he saw Elisa rushing past. He quickly chased after her. Lars lost sight of Elisa. Suddenly, he saw coins scattered on the ground, thrown down by Niku from above. Lars saw Niku, unable to contain his anger, but in a blink, Niku had disappeared. Alice's voice called out from the darkness, pleading for Lars' help. Following the voice, Lars saw memories from Alice's childhood. Her mother, holding young Elisa's hand, warned that she too had a spark in her hand, but they soon realized they were being eavesdropped on and disappeared immediately. Lars went deeper inside and saw himself unexpectedly kissing Ivy. Alice's consciousness then spoke up, asking if he liked her. Why was he kissing someone else? Right after, the consciousness began to shake Lars, knocking him to the ground. When everything returned to normal, he discovered a coffin. Behind the coffin was a room filled with crosses. Dracula was tied to a chair. Lars quickly came to his senses, having found the root of the problem. Only by saving Dracula could Elisa escape the danger. At that moment, Tonka sneaked into the room, transforming into a human to secretly monitor and report back to Dracula. But Dracula was no longer in a state to pay attention to this. He sat on the chair, twisting in pain, clenching his teeth, refusing to reveal where the other ruby stones were. Dracula, sensing a surge of energy, realized it was because Lars had placed the Countess's ruby stone around Elisa's neck. With the power of the ruby stone, Dracula immediately broke free from his restraints. By the time Abraham turned around, Dracula had vanished from the chair. He then tightly grasped Abraham's throat and snatched the invisibility ruby from him, successfully escaping the room filled with crosses. Meanwhile, Elisa also woke up. She thanked Lars's family and returned the ruby stone to the Countess. The principal advised everyone to rest early, patiently waiting for the next lesson. But Malcolm, who was to teach the next session, seemed to be troubled by something. Tonka, secretly watching, let out a sinister smile. Elisa could no longer feel the initial energy and guessed that Dracula had not taken the ruby stones with him. However, she discovered a new ability to become invisible. So, she used this power to find Lars and thank him for earlier. When she hugged him, Lars could feel her heartbeat. Before Lars could fully understand, Elisa's kiss dispelled all his doubts, and she quickly ran away. Lars was about to return to his coffin for sleep when he unexpectedly found that Markham's coffin door was still open. He went outside to find his friend and saw Markham talking to a mouse. Lars, not thinking much of it, told Markham to stay away from the mouse to avoid getting bitten. As soon as Lars left, Tonka appeared and handed Markham human blood. At the same time, Elisa was also not asleep. She was about to look for Ivy and found her cutting hair. The hair of Macaron, once cut, would never grow back. Ivy had no choice but to confess that she was the Shadow Macaron. The real heir was Seymour the Wolf. His family had been destroyed in a war. Seymour had transformed the ordinary Ivy into the Shadow Macaron to stay by his side. The two lived together, solely to find their family's ruby stones. At that moment, a light appeared in Alice's hand because they were holding hands, leading them into an illusion. They saw Dracula throwing the ruby stones into a grave. Perhaps he didn't want Elisa to grow stronger, so he temporarily hid the ruby stones. Eventually, both returned to reality. Elisa knew she had to untie the knot in the cave before Dracula, but she didn't know where the rope was. The most knowledgeable person was Elisa's foster father, so she immediately went to find him. With no other choice, he took her to a secluded place and brought out a diary written in code. This was the diary left by Elisa's mother. The answers Elisa sought were in there. She flipped through the now yellowed pages, the first page containing a warning left by her mother. First, she warned her daughter not to trust the clan leader, especially those from the Draka's line, specifically Lars's father. The diary noted something about a spark and the knot in the rope, but how to decipher the code wasn't specified. However, her mother believed her daughter would understand. Faced with yet another puzzle, Elisa couldn't figure it out and, frustrated, threw the diary down and walked away. Ivy knew she needed some time alone to calm down, so she picked up the diary without following Elisa. Meanwhile, the principal approached the heads of the clans to remind them that Dracula had awakened. Elisa had seen Dracula in her mind. Danger was approaching. Elisa went up to the town to clear her mind and unexpectedly encountered Niku, the boy who had always stood by the wishing well waiting for her. He intended to take Elisa for a walk, but suddenly Kavina appeared, wanting her son to join the Red Mask Society. Niku had no intention of joining, but Elisa said she wanted to go there, so the three went to the base together. The Red Mask members knew this place had Macaron. They were planning an ambush to eliminate them. Elisa blended into the crowd, suddenly feeling uneasy. At the same time, Makam's teaching time began, his family's talent being control of natural phenomena. Makam created thunder and rain, then raised his hand and directed it towards Lars, causing chaos in the classroom. The Countess tried her best to reassure the students, not expecting a mouse to sneak into the classroom. While everyone was focused on Makam, Tonka suddenly appeared and captured the Countess. Makam completely lost control and relentlessly attacked Lars. His anger, fueled by human blood, amplified his abilities. Ivy attempted to awaken his conscience, but Tonka constantly egged him on, stirring the chaos. Controlled by Tonka, Makam captured Ivy while Tonka herself seized the Countess. They boarded a ship and locked Lars and his group behind a door. At this moment, Elisa came out just in time to return and demanded that Tonka and Makam release their captives. Lars pushed open the door Makam had locked, using his mind-reading ability to communicate with Elisa, instructing her to divert Tonka's attention. As the sun was about to rise, Makam manipulated the clouds to block it. Amidst the confusion, Elisa, claiming she possessed the spark, persuaded Tonka to release the Countess, offering herself as a hostage instead. Upon hearing the word spark, the Countess immediately realized Elisa could not fall into Dracula's hands. She had promised Elisa's mother to protect the spark at all costs. The Countess ordered Lars to take Elisa away, then seized the human blood from Tonka and threw it into the sea. Seeing this, Makam impulsively jumped into the sea. As he left, the sunlight penetrated the clouds, forcing Tonka to seek shelter in the shadows. The Countess, weakened by the sunlight, collapsed. Elisa, protected by the Bellet family's ruby stone, stood in the sunlight watching the Countess perish. In anger, she dragged Tonka into the sunlight, where she burned to ash, dropping the recently stolen ruby stone and a ring she had swallowed. Elisa picked up the stone and ring, placing them around the neck of the Countess's son. She embraced the boy, who was in deep grief, as a somber mood enveloped the ship. Later, they rescued Makam from the water. Since Makam couldn't swim, they locked him up. By law, he would be exposed to sunlight. Meanwhile, Ivy finally retrieved her family's ruby stone, transforming the Heir back into human form. At this point, Lars called to Elisa. He was haunted by the instructions of Alice's mother, hoping Elisa could trust that he was different from the other Drakas. Elisa took his hand, deciding to trust him. Besides this, Lars had more to say. Worried for Elisa, he had used his mind-reading ability and knew the Red Mask group was preparing to attack. Meanwhile, Kavina's spies reported what they had seen, an apparent civil war on the ship, with two people turning to ash. This battle had seen the sudden appearance of a human girl. Because she could stand in the sunlight, Kavina suddenly remembered Elisa, the suspicious girl who was sometimes visible, sometimes not. The scene shifted to the Makaran ship, where everyone came to visit Makam. Elisa was willing to give him a chance, but Makam was required to teach everyone how to control the weather. The heirs must quickly learn to counter the Red Mask group. Halfway through the lesson, the principal returned from outside. Lars reminded everyone not to mention Makam's betrayal or the impending Red Mask attack, to prevent the principal from starting a war with humans. Luciano and Elisa were tasked with informing the principal that his wife had died. The boy in grief clung to his father, who was despondent as if he had lost his soul. Meanwhile, Kavina was secretly monitoring. When she saw Elisa, she was certain of her suspicions. Suddenly, whispers emerged from behind her and Dracula appeared. Seeing him, it seemed he was not the only one targeting this Makaran girl. Dracula's blue eyes gleamed, enchanting the Makaran hunter Kavina. She decided not to reveal today's events or disclose Alice's identity to anyone, including her son. However, Elisa took the initiative to visit them. She met with Niku, requesting to attend another meeting of the Red Mask group to clarify the enemy's plans. Lars secretly followed Elisa, coordinating actions with her. Meanwhile, the heirs continued their education. Today, it was Simmer's turn to teach, whose ability was transformation, capable of taking on various animal forms. As everyone focused on learning, Alice's foster father rushed into the classroom in panic, announcing that all the clan leaders had returned. Ivy immediately changed expression, reminding everyone not to forget their promise to Elisa, to temporarily keep the upcoming Red Mask attack a secret. Lars's father returned and met with the principal, who, ever since losing his wife, seemed like a lost soul, mumbling his wife's last words. "Be strong, be brave." Lars's father quickly gathered the heirs to find out what had happened and where Lars had gone. Elisa used her mind-reading ability to communicate with Lars and instructed him to go inside the Red Mask base and gather useful information. Lars snuck into the room and found a battle plan on a tactical map. Just then, two men entered the room, complaining about Kavina's late arrival, unaware that she was actually at Dracula's location. They also mentioned Alberto, a spy for Dracula. He reported to Dracula that all ship captains and the ruby stones were on the ship, causing the spark in Alice's hand to suddenly light up, and her consciousness arrived at the scene. Dracula, flaunting his power, boasted to Kavina that he had successfully drawn people from the Red Mask group to his side. Realizing Kavina was under control, Elisa returned to reality, took Nika's hand, and brought him into the illusion. Niku, seeing his mother enchanted by Dracula, was about to scream but suddenly found himself back in reality. Now fully aware of Alice's true identity. With the Red Mask group closing in, Elisa succinctly asked for Nika's help to stop Kavina. promising she would handle the situation with the McCarrans. After briefing Lars, they quickly returned to the ship. The clan elders urgently sought information. Elisa revealed that Dracula was present and had taken control of the Red Mask group's leader, aiming to steal all the ruby stones. Elisa proposed a plan, but the ship captains were hesitant to involve the youth. Thankfully, the principal stood up for them, trusting in these brave children. Simultaneously, Kavina, now a Shadow McCarran, pushed past an Ikeu, who was trying to stop her, leading the Red Mask group onto the ship. However, the ship seemed deserted, with no sign of any McCarrans. The group congregated on the deck, confused until Lars's voice was heard. The McCarran students were hiding on the masts and quickly surrounded the group. The clan elders were holding the ropes at the stern. The Red Mask group, wielding crosses, tried to threaten them, but the heirs no longer feared the crosses. Alice's brother summoned lightning, showcasing their mastery of the other clan's powers, which exceeded all expectations. Kavina, cornered, bared her fangs, seeing their leader was also a McCarran. The Red Mask group members jumped into the sea to escape. The group captured Kavina, but one last member of the Red Mask remained. He removed his mask to reveal it was Niku, shocked and pained by his mother's transformation and Alice's deception, and he left the ship disappointed. The heirs rejoiced as the Red Mask group was finally repelled. They saved the clan elder and prepared to leave Italy. Dracula, still watching the ship, murmured that this was just the beginning. Meanwhile, Lars approached Elisa, and the two young people shared their feelings openly. Standing on the ship's deck, they exchanged a kiss, confident in their ability to face whatever dangers the future might hold. This concludes Season 1 of the series, Ears of the Night, The Heirs of the Darkness. Would you like to see a Season 2? If so, please like and comment below to let us know. If there's enough interest, we will continue the series. Thank you for watching the video. Goodbye and see you again. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss out on exciting videos.